This is the Middle Way Philosophy series, video number 3 on Provisionality by Robert M Ellis. As we've seen from the first two videos, skepticism, the awareness of uncertainty, requires the middle way, which is the avoidance of absolutes, whether negative or positive. But skepticism also requires provisionality. So, what is provisionality? To start with, let's think about it like this. It's the capacity to change our beliefs in response to new experience or new reasoning. Something new comes up. Can you change to meet that new thing, or are you going to stick in the same old ruts? The key point where our provisionality is tested is that of judgment. We're making judgments, large or small, all the time throughout our lives, even if they're not all as important as the judgment of Solomon. So, are we going to make those judgments on the basis of a flexible engagement with the conditions around us? Or are we going to just fall back on repetitive old beliefs? That's the test of our provisionality. It depends on our states of mind as well as the circumstances. Provisionality involves two key elements that we're going to explore here. In relation to my beliefs, first of all, there's the awareness of limitations. Then, secondly, once I've become aware of my limitations, can I consider alternatives to my usual beliefs? So those two elements involve, firstly, critical awareness of my current beliefs and their limitations. Secondly, optionality, that is, having options, having alternatives. To start with critical awareness, of course, we can't keep up critical awareness all the time. We have to narrow our focus a lot of the time for practical reasons. But nevertheless, things will often come up. Suppose, for example, you're working with children, and then suddenly you experience a doubt about the whole way you've been going about childcare. What do you do about it? Well, you can't sit and think at that point. You have to get on with it. But you can think about it later. So what's crucial is how you respond to that doubt. Do you suppress it for practical reasons whilst remaining aware that there may be alternatives? Or do you simply repress it? Do you try and make it inaccessible or even try and eliminate it altogether? If you have suppressed rather than repressed, then when you have a moment for reflection, you can come back to what you suppressed, consider it seriously and properly. To be critically aware, you need to try to avoid dogma, that is, absolute beliefs which are maintained only by the power of the group. To get yourself free of dogma, you need to become aware of possible criticisms of such beliefs. Those with opposite beliefs are a good source of the kinds of criticisms you need to consider. And for that reason, what you may consider to be your enemy is, in other ways, your friend. He can help you make you more provisional in what you consider. But of course, it's important not to run headlong into another set of dogmas, to maintain critical awareness of both sides and use them to produce more awareness of the critical perspective on both sides of the spectrum. Provisionality requires us to find a point of balance where we're not overweighted on one side or the other side. Provisionality also requires autonomy of judgment, that is, that you're not overpowered by the power that the group has over you. Of course, we're social animals. We relate to other people in all sorts of ways, but you may need to separate yourself temporarily, at least intellectually speaking, in order to think in a balanced way about crucial issues. Optionality is the other crucial element of provisionality. And optionality is having different possible ways of thinking and behaving available to us. Those different options exist primarily in our brains in the form of synaptic tracks, that is, tracks which indicate the direction, the habitual direction of our thoughts and inclinations. Our habitual synaptic tracks are rather like main lines. We may go up and down them many times a day, and they involve certain goals which are habitual to us, certain beliefs which we normally wouldn't consider even examining. But we also need weak links if we're to be provisional in any way. So we need alternatives, at least the beginnings of new directions, new tracks that we might possibly go down, that we might develop in the future. We experience weak links in our imaginations. The imagination, after all, consists of lots of possibilities, lots of things we might think about. They're meaningful to us, but we don't believe in them. We don't think they're facts. We can develop our imaginations and create new weak links in our brains, particularly through the practice of the arts. That might mean appreciating the arts, whether it's visual art or music or literature or whatever, or by practicing those arts. Broadening our experience, for example through travel, is another way that we can develop more weak links. Learning other languages is another way in which we can develop more weak links. There's evidence that those who are multilingual become more flexible thinkers in the process. Simply by engaging with others too, by trying to understand where they come from, intellectually speaking or in any other way, we can also develop more weak links. We can develop more possibilities for ourselves. The more options we have available to us, the more adaptive we can be. That is, we can cope with unexpected new conditions because we're capable of rising to them, of thinking in new ways to adapt ourselves to those new conditions. Animals of the past who have died out have done so because they couldn't cope with a new environment. They ran out of options. They couldn't behave in a way that was appropriate for that new situation. To summarise then, provisionality has two key elements: critical awareness and optionality. Critical awareness, to start with, requires first of all that you seek and consider criticisms of your beliefs, particularly in moments of reflection when you're able to do so. Secondly, that you weigh them up autonomously. Optionality involves cultivating the imagination so that you have more options available to you. And you can do that particularly by broadening your experience and broadening your engagement.